Okay, so here we are. Um, this is going to be supplemental to the PowerPoint presentation that I have sent, and let's jump right into it. So slide one is of Hermione, and the title of the slide here is essentially my whole argument, is what my thesis was really about. And what we should note is that although my thesis was titled, in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit, her name was Belladonna Took, and that was the last you ever heard of her within the context of the story, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here we're talking about females, in fantasy fiction in terms of, standing out, being heroic, what all that entails. Are they role model worthy? Are they practical enough in the context that the story could not go on without them? Were they important? Are they believable? It's a big thing. Could somebody physically relate to these characters? Is it like having an omnipresent god or something, and where you cannot relate at all, where it's just like, oh, magical, yay, fairies? Or is it something that's more organic, something that triggers a response inside of us? If we go to slide 2, who cares? Who should care? Who does care? I'm going to try not to read from the slide or the jokes on the slides. I have a really hard time being serious for a full duration, maybe for 30 seconds at a clip. So you can read those for what they are. But who should care about, the women in fantasy, the way that women are portrayed through various media? That's where slide 3 comes in. We should all care. And the reason we should all care is because we can either concentrate on what's right in the middle, the Barbie, the impractical, unrealistic form that we give, the toys that all of our girls play with growing up, setting some, sickly, stick thin, and giant curvature norms for these girls that they'll never live up to. The smoking while pregnant, bad choice. You should be all you're really worth being. Let me read from the thesis here. Males operate within a system that is overly patriarchal. Some men are the doers, thinkers, and leaders, whereas women are the homemakers, nurses, and distant love interests. That was from Nancy Enright. Her article was called Tolkien's Females and the Defining of Power. So what you see on the left and on the right are thus two other choices instead of Barbie, instead of, the run-of-the-mill woman that's pregnant barefoot in the kitchen, whatever. If that's the role model that you have and you see, then that's what you want to emulate and you become. That's what you think is the realistic choice. Whereas to the left and the right, we have the first female and black astronaut, Mae Jemison, probably saying the name wrong. And we have Michelle Obama, the first lady, on the right. First black female first lady. Female and first lady are redundant. I realize this. Slide 4, it kind of echoes, we become what we see. Either we can be, this is what the feminists, the critics in particular that I address in my thesis, they have a field day with, because they see the Wicked Witch of the West and they see Dorothy. Dorothy is obviously the young girl going on her quest, to fulfill bravery. And while she's a young girl and she's obedient to the rules, she's a good girl. But then as women get older, they become jealous. They were more infatuated with power. They lose their beauty, etc., etc., etc. They become a witch. They want to try everything they can to usurp that from, the good little girls, or to control somehow, to take back power, fitting into this whole patriarchal idea that, they've lost their place. They're no longer desirable somehow. And that's pretty disgusting to think about. On the right, we see Supergirl. I guess this is the latest installment in superhero TV shows. I don't know. I don't follow it. But the idea is that you can be heroic, that you can still look like a normal, you know, teenage or young adult, and you can be doing extraordinary things. That's really all the symbolism there is there. I'm not talking about, Krypton and godly powers or anything like that. I'm talking about your actions defining you, as someone with a great legacy to leave behind. Um, Now, the next slide here, I'll pose some questions and try to keep these in the back of your mind. Why are fairy tale villains always witches? Why are they female? Think about Snow White, think about Sleeping Beauty, um, Cinderella to an extent, the wicked, step godmother, and the two sisters. I forget their names. Let's call them Smelly and Smellier. They're horrible. Why are women heroines over sexualized in comic books? It's another huge question. Why is it that, every Halloween you can find sexy cat women? Let's see, Batgirl, Harley Quinn, even. She's the villain, but same difference. You look at some of the X-Men and some of the get-ups they're wearing, or even some of the instances with the movies where Halle Berry was playing Storm and she's got skin tight clothing and whatever. It's totally impractical. Um, why are heroic women in fiction described as beautiful, as if it were a prerequisite? Um, we see this all of the time. We see this everywhere. You know, uh, whether it be Snow White overcoming, the white queen there, whether we see, Galadriel, Eowyn, Arwen, they're all described, as totally beautiful, and take the person back when they see them, kind of jaw dropping. Like, why can't a heroic woman just be a regular, you know, person with glasses, homely looking? You might say, why does looks factor into it? Why do we put such an emphasis on that? And where can we go to find brave, wholesome, strong women? Um, and I don't just mean to the library, where the librarian will shush you and tell you to go check out a specific book or not. We're going to use a terrible example with slide 6. Is what's the difference between these two people? Um, I'm doing this for the sake of simplicity. Clearly, it's Batman and He-Man, um, but I think a parallel can be drawn here between the heroic women as well as the heroic men. There is a lot of a double standard there, and it's just as hard for men to relate to a certain character as it is for women to relate to their opposite there. When you look at Batman, Batman is probably the most popular hero, period. Um, Everybody kind of likes Batman. They know the movies, they know TV shows, they have the toys. A lot of people don't like Superman because he's unrelatable. He's an alien to begin with, but he, true blue, no matter what, Boy Scout, never has, a fault. Um, he doesn't have his parents anymore. Um, but still, he's like a god. He can shoot heat vision out of his eyes and always saves the person at the last nick of time. Whereas Batman fails. Batman fails a lot. He is super rich. Okay, great. So nobody is ever going to have trillions of dollars like Batman does. Whatever. Batman is innovative. He's an engineer. Okay, so a very, very small percentage of people are ever going to be engineers and design these things and be able to drive, a Batmobile and shoot big guns and have a Batmobile dirt bike thing come out of it and whatnot. Okay, I'll give you that. But Batman is always prepared. Batman is smart. People can be smart. People can learn kung fu like Batman did. Batman doesn't have any superpowers. Batman isn't Hercules. He's not half god. Nothing. So he's not Superman. And instead of Superman on the other side there, I use He-Man. But Batman is a guy. He's a guy that fights, because of an emotional thing that happened to him. He lost his parents when he was very young. He believes that, he has to put a stop to this because, he has a dark side and he doesn't want to retaliate. He wants to make the world a better place because of what happened to him. He has faults. He gets himself, and other people that he loves hurt in the process of his quest, but he wants to do what is right. Batman has, you know, uh, people that go after him just because of what he represents, but he has to triumph and he's got adversity that he must overcome. Batman is a character that he doesn't go by the textbook code of hero. There's a lot of things that he does that would go, against the grain. Um, it's not black and white with him. Whereas we have He-Man, and He-Man has a sword, and He-Man transforms from a guy that wears pink and purple to, a huge muscle-bound dude wearing a fur thong and some chest guard that wouldn't really protect anything. And he fights Skeletor, who is some kind of zombie guy, person, wraith, revenant, whatever. You can't relate to He-Man. There's nothing in He-Man that a normal boy would ever be able to say, that's me, I'm going to do that. You could lift weights and look like Arnold Schwarzenegger did in Conan the Barbarian, and you'll still never look like He-Man. Whereas with Batman, you can get into shape. You can take kung fu. You can learn, some computer programming or whatever. You can be all of the values that Batman represents. He-Man is a shallow shell of a character. There's nothing really there other than he's the good guy and he wins. He has a sword. There's magic on his side, whatever. If we go to slide 7 now, we're going to look at two of the women that show up in fantasy fiction that are very good examples of women that are essentially just badasses. We're talking about Aowen, Lord of the Rings, and Kitiara from Dragonlance. Aowen and Samwise Gamgee, are the only two characters in The Lord of the Rings that complete a full character arc. They get developed, they go through a change, then they decide that with the rest of their life, they're going to devote it toward making a better place for the future generation through their actions. The other characters kind of settle off and do their own thing, and they get buried and remember as heroes, or they go off into the West and they're done and whatever. Sam settles down and creates a family. Aowen, she gets to have her big scene and the culmination of her will to help people and to protect her uncle and to fight the forces of evil, etc. She is the only one that takes down the Witch King of Angmar. She chops the head off of the giant beast. There's the emotion and, just the fact that she's a sword wielding badass, but she's just as trapped within her own, stodgy, stuffy gender role up there in Rohan, because nobody will take her seriously. They will not take her into battle. They will not allow her to ride. She and Mary go through the same sort of, mistreatment because they're not a typical tall, heroic figure. But with Aowen, when she's described, when you first meet her in the book, she's a lady in white. She's pure. She stands, tall, like she's protecting Theoden, who is, he's had his mind poisoned. He's kind of doubled over. There's not a whole lot going good for him. When the company, the three of them, Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn, they ride off and they take the paths of the dead, and when the other men all ride off to battle, Aowen is standing there watching everybody, and she's stone-faced. She's stoic. I believe Tolkien writes the line that she looks like she'd be carved out of the stone. She's strong. Obviously she's a little bit upset. She's been left behind again. But she's resolute. She knows in her heart what she has to do and what she wants to do. And she ends up doing those things. And then later, after having nearly been killed on the battlefield, she she eventually marries Faramir. We know this from the what do you call that in the back of the book? Totally lost the appendices. Hello. Uh, where time goes on, and she kind of changes her mind that battle is a horrible thing, and war, and you can't romanticize it. And what she can do now is devote herself to being a healer, to making peace with the world. You know, um, Eowyn is not a typical female character. Eowyn represents, wanting to break the mold, wanting to live outside of what society has kind of drawn the box around you with. Kidiara is a character from Dragonlance. It's not as well known, but in terms of fiction written in the 90s and with the popularity of the Dungeons and Dragons game, it became, like a cult classic kind of thing. I grew up reading Dragonlance. I'm 32 at the time of this recording. When I was in probably the 8th grade, I started getting into Dragonlance, maybe a little bit sooner. I can't really remember what year exactly, but Kidiara was one of the characters that really pulled me in. And Kidiara's story isn't that she's super heroic. She's actually an anti-hero of sorts. As you can see here on slide 7, she's fully decked out in, armor. I don't think that the sword is accurate. In fact, I think that she had a sword that was much shorter than that, and she's usually drawn with a polearm with a spear of sorts because she's a dragon rider. And so when you're riding a dragon, you need something very long in order to kind of joust with and get the other, stab at the people you're trying to get at. A big, huge dragon of swords. You're a little tiny person. You're not really going to hit anything. The point is, she's like a gladiator. She's dressed up and she's just as formidable as any of the other dragon high lords. That's what they call her. She's the Lady of Blue. She is the High Lord of the Blue Dragons. One of 5 versions. You have chromatic dragons under the evil Queen Thesis, also known as Tiamat in Dungeons and Dragons. So she is the Lady of Many Colors, while also being the Lady of No Colors. Thesis, not Kidiara. Kidiara wants to be on the winning side. Kidiara is anti-hero in that her ambition and her path to glory and to survival, it comes at the expense of, essentially fighting the friends that she grew up with and quested with along her journey to adulthood. And what really makes Kidiara's character, or her arc, complete is when, she has a reunion with her old lover Tanis, who is one of the main characters of the book. The series, at least the first series, there's many other offshoot series, but Dragonlance, in terms of the women, is known for Lorana, it's known for Kidiara, and it is known for Goldmoon. Some people will throw Tika Whalen into the mix. You need to read a lot more supplemental material in order to get a more rounded out version of her character, for instance. But Kidiara, she's not just in armor and taking up the garb of a man to make it in a man's world. She stands on par with any man. She can bluff, intimidate, fight, win her way out of any situation. She has all of these skills. She's good at diplomacy when she needs to. She's good at rallying people behind her. She's good at solving problems. She puts the right people in charge. She's a tactician, a skilled leader in battle. Being a woman doesn't hold her back. Being a woman doesn't soften her, in one way or another. It's not a hindrance. I think the fact that she's a woman character, it's much more secondary than, say, what's a good example here? Let's go back to previous example. Let's go to Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy, if she wasn't Dorothy, wouldn't, if her name was Frank and it was a boy going through, Oz, it wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense, right? Because of the ruby red slippers and, the lost dog and the lost little girl out there in a storm and whatever, supposed to be having some kind of fever dream because she got hit in the head with part of the house when it came off, etc. The story would be monumentally different if Kitty R wasn't a woman and the character was somebody else. But then the story wouldn't be Dragonlance, because Dragonlance is built in a world where women can be whatever they want to be. And Kitty R breaks down so many boundaries within that world that she can be leadership, that she challenges the might of, the biggest dragon army that there is, and puts everyone under her control necessarily, later on. Kitiara does all this in addition to finally completing her arc and becoming the person that she was meant to become. She ends up helping out Tanis and the friends at the very end when they finally are able to confront the main dragon, High Lord Ariakas, who is just a total, supreme villain type. She helps them to get in to create a distraction. Tanis and others kind of save the day. She realizes that she's not going to have Tanis in her life forever. They were a past thing, and they've both kind of moved on, and they're doing their own stuff. And, she respects him. She doesn't go after him like a jealous high school girlfriend type you might see somewhere else. And we're going to stop there for just a minute. Part of what makes this topic special is that the thesis didn't only concentrate on women that were strong. There are multiple female characters nowadays that you look at and you go, duh, like, how could anybody not see that? For instance, with Harry Potter, you have Hermione, you have Luna, you have, who else is all? Ginny, you have Professor McGonagall, if I'm saying that right, I don't know. You have the Hunger Games with Katniss. You have the Divergent series, and I forget the girl's name, and I should probably know that, but I don't right now. I'm having a brain meltdown. But within the context and the core of what I was getting at with the writing is that sometimes, and I think Judith Butler says this way better than I do, is that the world isn't necessarily separated into a binary. There shouldn't just be male, female. There shouldn't just be heterosexual, homosexual. There's a gray area between all of this stuff. And with all the laws that are being passed now about the transgender stuff, it's forget it. They wouldn't even know how to handle the idea that you could be, fluid within a gender role. But within the Lord of the Rings itself, the men that are present and are featured, they win the day because they embrace what had traditionally been accepted as a female role and a female trait. For instance, we'll go with Samwise Gamgee again, because he essentially is the real hero of the story, if you didn't know. Sam is the mother hen protector of Frodo. He knows where he is at all times. He's always an arm's length away, essentially. He is always kind of touching and maintaining contact with him. He's a support. He sacrifices everything that he can selflessly just to make sure that Frodo is getting to where he needs to be, that his health is maintained, his safety is of utmost concern, etc. Sam is always defending Frodo, no matter what else it might be from any other possible danger that might not even be looked at, like, maybe there's like a crow or something flying overhead, and Sam is going to make sure that he holds out the umbrella so that the crow doesn't poop on Frodo's head. Like, he is that much hyper focused. We look at the ways that the hobbits joke around, and they, laugh with each other, and they're familiar with, and they touch each other, and when they get scared, they huddle close together. These are not manly, overtly kind of masculine traits, especially not for a time right after World War I and II, when, the guys were supposedly in the trenches doing manly work and shooting the enemy and fighting the good fight. It's not things that you think of. When you look at Aragorn, you're looking at a strong king leader type figure, but he's not. He leads through love and compassion. He leads through, not wanting to see his race fall to, a dark lord. He has more love and respect for people than that. He is I guess one might call him a crusader, but really he's more of a den mother, like in the Boy or Girl Scouts, where they take it upon themselves to oversee the entire operation, and you might allow the other people to come with you, but the den mother always makes sure that everyone has a pillow and a blanket and is safe and keeps watch and knows that it's their duty, and it's paramount importance to keep everyone safe and to have a direction to go in. Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli form this brotherhood, this fraternity amongst themselves, you might say, and Gandalf as well. They all have this love and appreciation and respect and this bond with each other that you just don't normally see with men, in the business place or in the real world, unless it's your, family Christmas party and the guys are on the couch all within close proximity watching a football game and they're all fans of the same team. There's rarely that intimate high five contact. Men tend to usually stay away, and they don't visibly cry and they don't get scared, and they're rugged and they have a beard. I don't have a beard anymore. They're the brawny paper towel man with the axe, and they're cutting things down, and they take no prisoners. But the characters in the Lord of the Rings are not that. They get where they are because of compassion and love and thinking clearly, not reacting, with pride, not acting out of Boromir, for instance. He suffers a fate where he tries to take the ring from Frodo because of his pride, because of his disdain for the hobbits, because of his greed for the ring. And it's all technically from a place of wanting to do good and protect Gondor, but it's more because he doesn't trust anyone else, and because he wants that power, and he wants that title and that respect, and he wants to be the one. And, far be it from him to let anyone else do that. Whereas the rest of the party doesn't follow that same philosophy. In fact, Faramir is much more understanding, much more. He's not the bully and the fighter that Boromir is. He's more the thinker and the quiet one, and his father doesn't recognize him as much for that. The bias that the media portrays and that we eat up, is this whole narrative that the father is the breadwinner and goes out into the world and faces peril and does this hard work with his hands or with his brain. It's incumbent upon the woman to support the children and to make the dinner and to be the best seen, not heard, and make dessert and whatever, etc. that we talked about before. Let's take a break right here real quick. So if you direct your attention to slide 8, there's something interesting I would like to talk about here, and that is that imitation is often the best form of flattery. In this case, what comes before is what sets the tone and what allows us to think creatively to build upon and to honor that which comes before. So obviously, the larger picture to the left is Galadriel, and we are all familiar with who she is and what she represents. Um, the critics say that she is an unrealistic image of this magical being that's not flawed at all and is too perfect, and nobody could ever be her because her beauty is unparalleled, and Gimli worships her and asks for a lock of her hair as a memento, and is eager to defend her honor to anyone that might say otherwise, even though he himself had thought of her as a witch beforehand. Her beauty was so captivating and put him under such a spell, that she's this kind of temptress character, and it's such a sexist design from the start. And this is just not true. This is just a bunch of hullabaloo that is put out there in order to get people noticed, to cause controversy, to raise the debate, to make certain things relevant that had already been squashed years and years prior. Galadriel is what holds the Lord of the Rings together, and she appears at a time in the book of utmost importance, right after Gandalf is taken away from the company. And she is the glue that holds it together long enough for Frodo to be in a position to know what's going to come and to know what he has to do, for Sam to look inside of himself, to not let Frodo get too far away, as so that he's not within his care, to allow Boromir to realize that he is going to do something really not good, and she makes the judgment ahead of time of who's trustworthy and who's not. She gives out gifts accordingly. She can see, her wisdom is unparalleled, and even though Celeborn, her husband, whom she's supposed to rule Lothlorien with, he's considered the wisest in Middle-earth. He's not even wise enough to know that, of course, Gandalf didn't survive the trip during Moria. It was Galadriel that had this information given to her. She sees this in their hearts. Galadriel, the vocabulary that they use, that Tolkien puts in the book, is tall, strong, the forest brimmed with life. Galadriel was the life of the forest itself, and it was because of her. You feel the power of the lady upon entering the forest. You hear nothing about Celeborn. You hear the lady, and the lady is synonymous with the earth itself, being protected by the strong boughs and the leaves of the trees, sheltering from harm, sheltering from the eye of Sauron. And Galadriel is keeping the forest of Lothlorien, though it has come under the shadow of Mordor. He hasn't been able to penetrate it, whereas the forest to the north, the Mirkwood, has been overtaken by the power of the Dark Lord and spiders, and it's not safe. And that's where Bilbo and his, dwarvish companions got mixed up with all of that black that was so. It was thick. It was like an evil that hung in the air. You could not see, 2 feet in front of you, whereas the forest of Lothlorien, the flowers and the leaves and everything reflects the sun that it caught during the day, and there's a purity there. There's a sense of calm, and there's an enchantment. There's a strength. There's a power. All of that is Galadriel. She's not just this blessed Virgin Mary figure. She is a mother. She is the one that the heroes cry to upon losing Gandalf. That's finally where they're able to start their grieving process. Aragorn and Legolas and Boromir, they all get the hobbits to a place, beyond where the orcs can reach them in order for them to start their grieving. And that Legolas is the first part where he says that he mourns the loss of Mithrandir. They're able to do that because of the power of Galadriel and their safety within that Lothlorien. Because of Galadriel, we get characters like Goldmoon later in Dragonlance. She is the top right photo. You can see obviously the similarities. She's got a magic staff. She's got the blonde hair. She's considered very beautiful. Um, she's not an elf. I don't want anybody to get that mixed up. Goldmoon is a human. She's in a barbarian wanderer nomad tribe. They're known as the Keshu or the Kishu. It's hard to pronounce. Starts with a Q. It makes it all awkward all the time. And Goldmoon becomes like a mother figure, and Goldmoon is the person within that series that allows the people to find their faith in the gods again. Just like Galadriel was able to peer into the hearts of those and make them brave or make them know what was going to come up, or to test Frodo and to test Sam, to test Boromir, Goldmoon is able to go between the people and the gods. She finds the magical blue staff. She's the one that's charged with the errand to go on this quest in Dragons of Autumn Twilight. It's not anybody else that would be pulled into the adventure if not for her. But when the characters meet her in the inn in Solace in the beginning of the book, she's the one that's already been called. She is the hero, the true person going on this quest. And as much as it involves the other characters, and there isn't really a main character in Dragonlance, she's the one that finds the old wizard Fizban in the inn, and he tells about this, what the story behind the staff, etc. Fizban is actually one of the gods, Paladine, and it's this whole quest set in motion to restore faith. And Goldmoon gets the blue staff she's holding in her hand is a healing staff, and if she was to touch the person with it, they would be, all of their ails would be remedied, and they would not die, and they would be able to go on, and hunky dory, right? Well, the staff becomes broken, and over the course of the journey, she is able to retrieve an artifact from a sacred temple of one of the gods that was washed out during this disaster called the Cataclysm that happened 500 years ago. And once she obtains this artifact, something really, really bad happens to her particular bodyguard slash love interest slash other barbarian there with her from the same tribe. And his name is Riverwind. And she calls upon the name of the gods in prayer and lays her hands on him, and she is able to heal him of his wounds without the staff, without some other magic thing. She just has the power flowing through her. She is the first true cleric in 500 years, and a lot of the story thereafter that's written is about her and about her teaching other people the way and about her restoring the gods to the world of Krynn. It's a very poetic way to represent the power that was Galadriel, and to take the ideas such as her and how much she meant to that story, and to retell it the way that they do. The final picture on the slide, the one to the bottom right, is one of the characters that has been the artwork on every installment of a video game that was popular many, many years ago. It was the first real MMORPG, massive multiplayer online role-playing game called EverQuest. I played it for a number of years. I didn't really do all that well. Internet back then being what it was. But she is an elf. You can see the pointed ears. You can see the golden hair. You can see the magic staff. She is a cleric. She is a magic user and a healer. I don't know why all the women get relegated to being the healer, but if you want to see a woman that's not a healer at first, you can see Eowyn, but she becomes a healer, so it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, I guess. Elves plus magic plus woman equals healing. Now, throughout this series, the people within the world of EverQuest, they start to gain enough power to go to the different planes, the different elemental planes, the different realms of which the gods themselves walk on. And they try to bring balance back to their world because all of the gods obviously are, in a battle to. This seems to be a very huge thing within the Dungeons and Dragons world of lore, is that they're always in conflict, and it's up to the hero to save the day. Well, this woman is at the forefront of all the artwork and all of the as the story progresses kind of thing. As the story is told, every expansion, has her in it and her eyes, and um, you obviously play as a different character. You create your own, but this person is front and center on every piece of literature in every game, and it's just nice to see how you take it a step further each time you go back to your old source material and inspiration. And without characters like Galadriel, without characters like Golden Moon, and without the stereotypical healer kind of character from EverQuest, you don't get to see women be badasses a lot of the time unless they're doing something in a completely different walk of life, such as the astronaut, such as First Lady. Um, we've got women that are running for other different political offices now. They're prime ministers around the world. Women are running for president here, vice president, etc. Women are doing, incredible things every day, being mothers, being feminine, whatever it means to belong to that gender, that subtype, that whatever you want to call it. They exist. And fantasy genre is not just written for boys. It includes a lot of these different types of characters. My thesis was quite in depth about this. It was, I don't know, about 93 pages worth of text. And it's very hard to cut that down and try to fit it into something that's a lot shorter. But I hope that I kind of gave you a breakdown enough of where we were going to go with it and the kinds of topics that you would encounter within it. I want to bring up the fact that Hermione, from Harry Potter, and Katniss Everdeen from Hunger Games, is more or less the archetype of the badass female that has a lot going on, and it's stronger because it has the women in it, and it wouldn't be the same story without them in it. They're more than a love interest. They're more than somebody that just to breed a baby factory, if you will. They are part of the living and breathing world that becomes the fantasy literature, and the world is constructed for them and around them rather than the other way around, to where the world would have to be filled with them, if that makes any sense. And with that, I'm going to cut off the video, and I hope that this PowerPoint, for limited as it was kind of helpful. I hope that it gave you questions to think about and answer for yourselves. And I'm available to be reached. If anyone has other questions, I would be happy to talk with them about all of the things that I found, to share articles and, page numbers with quotes, and, just other books that you can read in order to find out where you can find some other great examples of, strong female characters in fantasy literature. Thank you.